On a wind-bitten prairie road, a grieving schoolteacher named Marian Dale collapses beside her saddlebags, convinced there is nothing left in her life worth saving. A quiet rancher, Wyatt Hale, finds her trembling in the dusk, and instead of turning away, he lays his coat over her shoulders and says, "No one breaks beyond repair. Not on my land." That single act of mercy becomes the first spark of slow, healing love neither of them expected. The wind never cared about human pain. It moved across the prairie the same way it had for centuries, brushing over wheat fields, scraping against fence posts, rattling dry grasses, whispering every secret it had ever stolen from travelers who crossed this land. It was that wind that found Marian Dale first. She stood alone on the narrow road, one hand around her horse's halter and the other clutching the side of her coat, as if she could hold herself together by force. Her brown mare, little more than bones and will, stood trembling beside her. The animal lifted its head once, as if expecting a command, then lowered it again, exhausted. Marian's fingers loosened. The horse's reins slipped from her grasp and fell to the dirt. Her knees hit the ground a second later. The prairie stretched empty in every direction. No wagons, no townsfolk, no lanterns. Just wind and sky and a single woman dressed in morning black. Her breath hitched in ragged sobs, escaping through cracked lips. She had buried her father 3 weeks earlier, a kind man who once carved wooden toys for children in the schoolyard where she taught. 3 weeks was all it had taken for her world to become unrecognizable. The schoolmaster replaced her. The bank sold her childhood home. The pastor pressed coins into her palm and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Dale. There's nothing left we can do." She believed him, so she rode west. No plan, no destination, just distance. Distance from the pitying eyes, distance from the memories, distance from the grave that felt too small for the man who raised her. Her entire life was packed into a saddlebag and a worn leather satchel. That wasn't what broke her. It was the letter, a single folded sheet from a man she once loved. A man who left her 2 summers ago to chase fortune in Colorado. "Marian, I pray you find peace, but I cannot return to you. Marriage is not on my path. Please forgive me." That letter rode with her in her pocket like a shard of glass. So when the wind rose and her horse stumbled and her own legs folded beneath her, Marian finally whispered the words she had never spoken aloud. "I think I'm too broken for love." Not a dramatic confession. Not a cry for attention, just the kind of truth a tired heart whispers when it has nothing left. And the wind, heartless and ancient, carried her whisper away. She didn't see him at first. All she heard was the slow, steady rhythm of hoofbeats, measured, confident, like the heartbeat of a man who never rushed without reason. The mare lifted her head. Marian wanted to run. Instinct more than logic, but she couldn't move. Her limbs were numb. Her chest burned. Her pulse hammered in her neck. She looked up. A horse emerged out of the dusk. Chestnut coat, broad shoulders, reins held with effortless command. The rider sat tall in the saddle, a wide-brimmed hat lowered against the wind. He slowed when he saw her, as if careful not to spook a wild creature. Marian's hand fumbled for the pocket knife in her boot. Her voice came out cracked and small. "Don't come closer. I don't have anything worth taking." The rider didn't react with offense. He swung down from the horse, deliberate, controlled, and kept his distance. Boots on dust, gloves at his sides. He spoke gently. "Ma'am, if I wanted to rob you, I'd have already dismounted with my hand on my gun. I didn't." His voice was steady and low, like a man who lived more in silence than words. "I'm Wyatt Hale," he said. "About a ranch a few miles west. I was riding fence line. Saw your horse limping." He crouched to examine the mare's hooves, not looking at Marian until he absolutely had to, like a doctor giving a patient space to breathe. "Looks like she starved near through," he murmured. "You too." His eyes finally lifted. They were not the eyes of a predator or a stranger sizing up valuables. They were the eyes of a man who knew loss, a man who recognized it instantly in someone else. We tell stories like this for a reason. The world still has people on lonely roads, holding themselves together by scraps of hope. If you're listening, leave a word of kindness for someone who might see it. A stranger you'll never meet could need it more than you know. Marian swallowed hard. Shame burned in her throat. I'm not helpless, she said. I never said you were, he replied. The mare stumbled again, nearly collapsing. Wyatt stepped forward, one hand raised. Sir, Marian whispered, please. He halted, 5 paces away. Then he unbuttoned his coat and laid it across her shoulders in one fluid motion. Not asking permission, not pretending she wasn't shivering. Just quiet mercy. Storm's coming, he said. You'll freeze out here. Marian stared at the coat's collar, stitched, worn, smelling of saddle soap and pine. Why are you helping me? She asked. He looked at her for a long moment, and the answer came in a voice barely above the wind. Because I know what it looks like when someone's given up, and I won't ride past a second time. Wyatt didn't force her onto his horse. He walked beside her, one hand on the mare's halter, the other holding his own reins. Step by step, Marian moved like a sleepwalker, slow, trembling, barely aware of the ground beneath her. Do you live alone? She asked. He hesitated. Mostly. My sister Elaine keeps the books. Couple ranch hands in the bunkhouse. Rest is quiet. Quiet. The kind of quiet that follows loss. They reached a ridge. Below it, lanterns glowing in a farmhouse window. Marian halted. I can't, she whispered. You don't know me. I don't know you. I might be dangerous, he offered softly. Then it's a good thing I'm the one holding the reins. She almost laughed, frightened and grateful at once. He touched his hat brim. I'm not asking you to trust me forever, he said. Just tonight. Something inside her cracked. Just tonight. Just long enough to breathe. She nodded. He lifted her carefully without grabbing or guiding her body, just bracing her arm and letting her choose the moment her feet left the ground. She wasn't lifted like a damsel. She was assisted like a human being. That mattered. The Hale ranch house was sturdy. Timber walls, stone fireplace, long farmhouse table with too many empty chairs. Wyatt guided her into the kitchen. Oil lamps glowed gold. A kettle hissed on the stove. The smell of fresh cornbread floated through the air. A woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair looked up from kneading dough. Wyatt Hale, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. If you've dragged home another half-dead creature for me to nurse. She stopped when she saw Marian. Her voice softened. Oh, honey. Wyatt tipped his hat. Found her on the prairie. Horse near dust. Elaine moved with the confidence of an older sister who didn't scare easily. Sit, she said to Marian. Don't argue. Marian sat. Her body shook so badly the chair rattled. Wyatt poured tea and set it in her trembling hands. She tried to speak. I don't want to be a burden. Elaine snorted. Burden? Child, half this town would have starved without the pies I bring to church on Sundays. We take turns being burdens. Makes us human. Wyatt's gaze lingered on Marian's face. He didn't smile, but something in his eyes eased, like he'd found a piece of the world that made sense again. Marian ate slowly. Every bite felt like a betrayal, of shame, of starvation, of the voice that said she didn't deserve to rest. Wyatt sat across from her, elbows on the table, hands folded. He wasn't interrogating her. He was simply present. Where were you headed? He asked. I don't know, she whispered. Where are you from? Clearwater. He nodded. Nice folks there. Good school. Her stomach twisted. I taught there. You don't anymore? She shook her head. The children lost their teacher, he said softly. They got another, she replied. They lost the one who held their hands when they scraped their knees, he said. Not the same thing. She blinked hard. How would you know that? Wyatt didn't answer at first. Then, because my wife treated every orphan foal on this ranch like they were born of champions. People don't forget gentle hands. They remember them until the day they die. Marian's breath caught. You were married? Was, he murmured. Fever took her. Years ago. The room seemed to still. The wind outside faded. The lamp flame lowered itself. Did you ever try again? She asked. No. What? He looked at her, long enough that she almost apologized for asking. Because some women are too strong to replace, and some men are too stubborn to believe they deserve another chance. She swallowed. The letter in her pocket weighed 1,000 pounds. She lifted her eyes. I loved someone once, she whispered. He decided fortune meant more than I did. Wyatt didn't scoff. He didn't pity. He just nodded like he'd seen that story 100 times. I'm sorry for him, he said. She frowned. For him. Any man foolish enough to walk away from someone who still cries over the people she lost deserves pity. Heat rose in her chest. You don't know me. No, he said. But I know pain when I see it. And I know how it settles in someone's shoulders when they've been carrying it alone too long. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was survival and warmth, and the knowledge of two souls who had lived through winters they didn't think they'd outlast. That is how Western romances truly begin. Not with fireworks, but with the first night someone falls asleep without fear. Elaine gave Marian a guest room. Blankets thick, windows shuttered against the wind. Wyatt paused at the doorframe. If you need water, you call down, he said. Marian nodded. He hesitated. You're safe here. He said it without hesitation, without a quiver, without checking whether he believed it. He said it like a promise carved in wood. Marian's throat tightened. She didn't know why she believed him, only that she did. Morning rose pale and quiet. Marian woke, expecting to feel hollow. Instead, she felt still. Elaine was already frying eggs. Wyatt sat at the table, ledger open. He glanced up. You heal faster when you have something to do, he said. Marian blinked. I can help. I've done chores. I'm not fragile. He didn't correct her. He just handed her a bowl of flour and asked, You bake? Yes. Then the boys will think the angels finally answer their prayers. She laughed. It shocked her. How natural it felt. Wyatt didn't ask why she laughed. He just looked like a man relieved to see the sun again. Days turned into weeks. Marian baked loaves that filled the Hale kitchen with the scent of honey and wheat. She stitched torn cuffs, mended tack, and learned the rhythms of a ranch that breathed steady, even when the world outside felt wild. Wyatt watched her with the patience of someone who had once rushed a dying dream and learned better. Sometimes she caught him studying her, not with hunger or pity, but with a strange kind of respect. She didn't know how to handle that. Respect wasn't something she was used to receiving. One afternoon, while she scrubbed the copper pot, Wyatt leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely. Boys in the bunkhouse told me they haven't tasted cornbread like this since their mamas were alive, he said. That's an exaggeration, Marian replied, cheeks heating. Maybe, he said, but they sounded grateful. Her hands paused. Gratefulness makes a man speak better of things, Wyatt added gently. Sometimes truth lives in the warmth, not the words. She swallowed. You talk like a preacher, she said. No, he murmured. Just a man who's lost enough to know when something's worth holding on to. The pot slipped in her fingers. He caught it before it fell. Their hands touched, not fireworks. Only a soft reminder that two people could reach for the same thing and not break it. The first time Marian rode into Dry Creek with Wyatt, people stared. Not cruelly. Not yet. Just curiously. A widow in a plain blue dress beside the quietest rancher in 3 counties drew whispers like flies to honey. Mrs. Hargreaves at the mercantile called out as Marian examined spools of thread. You're the schoolteacher from Clearwater, aren't you? Marian stiffened. Yes. Ah, Mrs. Hargreaves said. I heard they replaced you with the mayor's niece. Shame. Good teachers don't grow on trees. Wyatt seemed to straighten behind Marian, jaw flexing. Did you lose your husband? Another woman asked, tone light but eyes hungry. Marian nodded. Fever, she said. Oh, honey, the woman cooed. Wyatt Hale, finding you was the Lord's blessing. A woman alone that far out. She lowered her voice. Anything could have happened. Marian didn't respond. Wyatt did. Good thing anything stayed out of her way, he said calmly. There was steel behind the words. Something unspoken. Do not poke at wolves when you can't outrun them. The women scattered. Marian glanced at him. You didn't have to do that. He shrugged. You don't owe them your pain. The winter settled like an old blanket. Long evenings. Warm lamplight. Wyatt carved spoons in the living room, while Marian read aloud from war novels Elaine rescued from estate sales. Sometimes Elaine fell asleep in her chair, needles loose in her fingers, and Marian would drape a blanket over her shoulders. Wyatt said nothing about it. He only smiled a little, like the sight made something inside his rib cage ache in the best possible way. One night, Marian dared to ask the question she'd held since their first meeting. When you said you wouldn't ride past pain again, what did you mean? Wyatt set aside the small piece of cedar in his hands. My brother, he said quietly. War took him. Came home in body, not in spirit. Drank himself straight into the grave. Marian touched the edge of her book. I'm sorry. So am I, he said. But I learned the cost of pretending sorrow don't exist. Saw it kill the strongest man I knew. He looked at her. Pain don't scare me anymore. Silence does. She had no reply. Only the sound of her heartbeat and the soft crackle of the fire. The blizzard arrived without warning. Wind like knives. Snow like ash. Sky the color of iron. Wyatt and the hands rode the herd in, one lantern between them. Marian paced the porch with a quilt around her shoulders. Elaine sat beside her, arms crossed, muttering prayers like curses. Hours passed. At last, hoofbeats. Wyatt dismounted, snow clinging to his hat, muscles stiff from the cold. We lost one steer, he said. Save the rest. Marian exhaled relief, until she saw the bundle in Elaine's arms. Not blankets. A child. No more than 5. Hair matted. Skin blue-tinted with cold. Eyes enormous and unfocused. Wyatt's voice gentled. Found her beside an overturned wagon. No sign of parents. Just this. He held up a small wooden doll, carved roughly, painted with faded red ribbons. Marian's breath left her. Oh heavens. Elaine spoke slowly. She wasn't crying, just sitting there, holding the doll, like she knew crying wouldn't change anything. Marian knelt beside the girl. What's your name? The child blinked, lips trembling. Rose, she whispered. Not a scream, not a sob, just a tiny flower trying to root itself in frozen ground. Marian wrapped her arms around her. Rose melted into her chest, trusting without reason. Wyatt looked away as if the sight was too much for his heart. Rose slept between extra quilts in Marian's room that night. Marian sat awake, stroking the child's hair, remembering another little girl she had taught who lost her mother during harvest. There was no fear in Marian's touch, only recognition. Wyatt stood in the doorway, hands in pockets. You don't have to take this on, he said. Marian didn't look up. I know. He hesitated. We don't know if her family is alive. I know. He took one step closer. We don't even know where she came from. Marian finally met his eyes. I know what abandonment looks like, she said softly. And I know what freezing looks like. Wyatt swallowed. So do I. For a moment, 2 wounded lives looked at a child more broken than either of them, and both understood the unspoken choice. Love her anyway. Word spread faster than wildfire in dry brush. Wyatt Hale, the widower who still kept his wife's portrait above the mantel, brought home a strange woman and a child. Marian heard things at church. She's trying to trap him. Where'd that girl come from? No respectable woman walks into a bachelor's home and stays. The comments landed like cold pebbles. One struck deepest. She's too broken. A man like Wyatt deserves better. Marian flinched so hard Elaine dropped her hymnal. Honey, Elaine said, there ain't a tongue on this earth God won't punish eventually. Some sooner than others. But the words had already found their way into Marian's ribs. Too broken. Not deserving. Stealing another woman's place. She stopped singing halfway through a hymn and stared at the pew in front of her. Wyatt touched her elbow as they left the church. They don't know you, he murmured. She whispered back. They don't have to. Their words know how to cut. He said nothing because he knew she was right. It happened 3 weeks later. Dry Creek's market day. Longtemps du Stade. Winter wind biting through shawls. Marian held Rose's hand tightly. A woman passed by. Young, sharp eyes, lips curled. Oh, look, she said to her friend. Wyatt Hale finally found someone desperate enough to warm his bed. Rose didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. She tugged on Marian's sleeve. Are they talking about me? The child whispered. Marian's heart cracked. No, sweetheart, she said quickly. They're wrong. They don't know anything. But the damage was done. That night, as snow dusted the porch rail, Marian confronted Wyatt. I shouldn't stay, she said, voice shaking. Rose deserves a clean start, not a scandal. Wyatt stared at her, stunned. Dang dang. They think I'm trying to replace your wife, she choked. As if I could. As if I'd want to. His jaw tightened. I don't care what they think. I do, she cried. I've lived my whole life losing jobs, losing respect, losing homes. I won't make you lose yours too. Wyatt's voice lowered, almost breaking. Marian, the only thing I've lost since you came here was the sound of loneliness. He stepped closer, close enough to see her tears, close enough that she could smell pine and horse on his coat. You think you're too broken for love, he said. She tried to speak, failed. And maybe you are, he continued gently. But so am I. The difference is, I stopped believing broken meant finished. He touched her hands, not claiming them, just steadying them. If the world won't give Rose a mother, then I'll stand beside the woman who chooses to be one. Marian's lips trembled. You're not asking to marry me. No, he said. I'm asking you to stay. As family. As breath in these walls. As the reason this land doesn't feel like a graveyard anymore. Her vision blurred entirely. This isn't charity, she whispered. Wyatt's voice cracked. No, Marian. This is mercy, and I will not let you walk away from it. Spring arrived like a slow miracle. Green shoots, lambs in the pasture, warm mornings. Rose slept curled in Marian's lap when the evenings were too long. Wyatt built a second fence rail so she could reach the corral safely. Elaine taught her to braid bread, and for the first time since her father's funeral, Marian heard her own laughter without feeling guilty for it. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled over the barn, Wyatt approached her with a sheet of paper. Judge Dawson is riding through town, he said. Man owes me a favor. Marian blinked. What kind of favor? Wyatt nodded toward the yard, where Rose ran after a chicken, arms flailing. The kind that puts her name on our family papers. Marian's knees nearly gave out. You mean? I mean what you think I mean. He took her hand. Not because I pity her, and not because I pity you. He paused. But because the people I love shouldn't spend another night wondering if they belong. That evening, Marian stood at the fence rail, watching Rose feed the foal she'd named Dandelion. Wyatt joined her. You were wrong, you know, he murmured. About what? You told the wind once that you were too broken for love. Marian blinked. How did? He smiled a little. You said it out loud the night I found you. Thought I didn't hear you. She closed her eyes. I was barely alive. No, he said. You were alive enough to whisper the truth. And I was alive enough to answer it. He turned her gently by the shoulders. Love don't fix us, Marian, he said. It just gives us the tools to try. She swallowed. And what if I fail? Then let me fix what life took from you, he said. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just real. Just Western. Just a promise from a man who had seen broken things before and learned how to tend them. Marian leaned her forehead against his chest, breath unsteady. Wyatt wrapped one arm around her waist, the other resting on her shoulder. Behind them, Rose's laughter rang across the yard, bright, fragile, alive. It was the sound of a future claiming space where grief once ruled. And Marian Dale, once collapsed on a prairie road, finally believed. Broken was not the end. It was the beginning of being held. If this story brought you warmth, and if you believe every broken heart deserves a second chance, stay with us. More Western tales of healing await.